Today's lesson is on slope-intercept form. As usual, we have a video guide to go along with this lesson. If you haven't already printed it, go ahead and pause the video, print it off, and then come back so that you can do the problems with us. So far we've been talking about slope. We found slope from a graph, we found slope from 2 points, and now we're doing slope from an equation. There is a special type of equation that we're going to use, and it's called slope-intercept form. And it needs to be in this form. Y equals mx plus b. Has to be in this form. This is going to be our favorite form for a long time. So y has to be all by itself at the beginning. There's almost always, like 98% of the time, there's always going to be a y and an x in our equations. And later on we'll talk about the special times when there isn't a y or an x. But y always needs to be at the beginning by itself. And then we have our equal sign. We have an m here right in front of the x. Now that m represents slope. And anytime we're dealing with algebra and we see that letter m, especially when it's talking about graphs and things like that, the m will always stand for the slope. And remember, slope is the slant of the line. Okay, x is going to be just one of our variables. It's going to be in every equation that we look at today. And then the last letter, this b, represents the y-intercept. Now this is probably a new term for most of you. If you've heard it before, that's great. If not, I always think of intercept like intersect. Intercept sounds a lot like the word intersect, so I think of those two together. The y-intercept is just where the line crosses the y-axis. Again, it's called the y-intercept, so where it crosses the y-axis. And remember, when we have our graphs, the y-axis is the vertical, the x is the horizontal. Okay, so when we're talking about a line, like if I graphed a line right here, the y-intercept would be this point. Okay, that's where it hits the y-axis, so that's the y-intercept, where the y-axis and our line intersect. Okay, so the reason why it's called slope-intercept form is because it gives you the slope and the y-intercept, as long as it's in this form. If it's not in this form, then you have to manipulate the equation a little bit. But today we're really going to be focusing on this slope-intercept form, so we're going to have problems in this form. So let's take a look at some examples. Taking a look at our worksheet, number 1, our equation is y equals 6x plus 1. Now the directions ask us to find the slope and the y-intercept. So looking at this equation, the nice thing is it's already solved for y, so it's in my form, my slope-intercept form. So if it's already solved for y, then my slope is just the number in front of x. Right? And always means slope, so that's the number in front of x. So my number in front of x is just 6. So the slope for this equation is 6. My y-intercept, okay, where it crosses the y-axis, that's always the constant at the end of the equation, okay? B is the y-intercept, okay? It's at the end of the equation. My positive 1, my plus 1, is at the end of my equation, so my y-intercept is positive 1, okay? If it's a plus 1, it's positive. If this had been minus 1, it would be negative, okay? And that's it. That's all we're doing today, just identifying what the slope and the y-intercept are. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Okay, for number 2, we have y equals negative 4/3 x minus 1. Okay? Again, looking at this problem, it's already solved for y, just like it's supposed to be. Slope-intercept form must be solved for y. This one is. Y is all by itself. So that means my slope is just going to be the number in front of x. So the number in front of x is negative 4/3. So that's my slope. Now, please don't put x with it. X is not the slope. Okay? X is a variable. It's its own thing. All right? Negative 4/3, that's the slope. It's the number in front of x, not x. Okay? And lastly, our y-intercept. Again, the y-intercept is always at the end. Now this time it's a minus 1. So like I said before, If it's plus, it's positive. If it's minus, that means the y-intercept is a -1. And that would be our answer. Slope is -4/3, y-intercept is -1. All right, let's take a look at number 3. Erase. For number 3, our equation is y equals 1/4 x plus 2. Y equals 1/4 x plus 2. So again, this is already solved for y, so I don't have to solve it for y. It's already there, okay? So to figure this out, we just take a look at the number in front of x. That will give us the slope, and the slope is always in front of x. So my slope is 1/4. And then the y-intercept is the last number. It's a plus 2, so that means it's positive. So my y-intercept is positive 2. And that's our answer. Slope is 1/4, y-intercept is positive 2. All right, number 4. Our equation is 6/5 x minus 3. Y equals 6/5 x minus 3. So the slope, number in front of x, would be 6/5. And our y-intercept is the ending number. This is a -3, so my y-intercept is -3. Again, if it's plus, it's positive. If it's minus, it's negative. Okay, now number 5 is a little bit different, so I want to take a look at that together. You'll notice that there's a number missing. We have y equals, it's -x plus 5. All right, our slope is supposed to be the number in front of x, but there is no number in front of x. There's just that negative sign. So if there's no number in front of x, remember, there's an invisible 1. They just don't write it. So go ahead and write it in. Once we write it in, it becomes a lot more simple. Our slope is just the number in front of x. Well, now that I've written in the 1, I know that my slope is a -1. My y-intercept is still that last number. Okay, this is a plus 5, so that means my y-intercept is a positive 5 right here. So I put 5 for the y-intercept, and that's my answer. Okay, last one, number 6. We have y equals 1/2 x. Again, it's already solved for y, so the number in front of x is my slope. Number in front of my x is positive 1/2, so my slope is 1/2. All right, after that, I need my y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept is supposed to be that last whole number, but I don't have a number at the end here. If that happens, your y-intercept is actually 0. If there's nothing there, it's like you're adding 0. If you want to write it in, you can. But if there's nothing there, the number that represents nothing is 0. So our y-intercept is 0 because it's nothing. It's not existent in our equation. So this would be our answer. Slope is positive 1/2. Y-intercept is 0. And that's the end of our lesson on slope-intercept form. The back of the worksheet is just more practice, so you can take a look at that, work through those problems, and then check your answer with the website.